Hi friends, you are back in my most comfortable place in my home, and I'm excited to share with you guys today 2 authentic recipes which I've kind of recreated just because I want it to be just a little bit healthier. The simplicity of these dishes are my favorite part about it. In episode 1, I did the ancient Hmong chicken soup, and there are leftovers. I was not raised to throw anything away. I was raised to save everything and do something with it. And so let me show you guys what to do with the leftover ancient soup from episode 1. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it, please. We're also doing some giveaways. I'm giving something away today. Every single episode is going to offer you, my friends, a chance to win something that I use in each episode. So today I am making LAAB, and I am making a spicy cucumber salad. I have removed MSG and I have simplified these dishes. These are also ancient, traditional Hmong recipes. However, again, I've just made it a little bit simpler and healthier. So the first thing we need to do is this recipe for LAAB, this meat salad, is going to need some rice powder. And sure, you could totally buy it at an Asian store, but I was not raised to do that. I was raised to make it from scratch. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this first because preparation's everything. It just takes longer if you don't have it ready. This is one of the vital key ingredients to the meat salad, the LAAB. First thing we need to do is put it on the stove in a pan and heat it up on medium-high. The goal is to babysit it until it toasts to a brown color. I put about a cup in here because I always like to have extra rice powder on hand, and so it's helpful to have, you know, enough so that you don't have to do it every single time. When I was about 5 years old, I started cooking, and rice was my first job. I was the steamer, the girl that had to get up at about 5 in the morning to steam rice, and that was a task because we didn't just use rice cookers back in the day when I was 5 years old. We would use bamboo steamers to steam rice from scratch, and so we would have rice soaking overnight, and then in the morning you would heat up. On the bottom part you put water in, and on the top part you would put the bamboo steamer in, and you would put the rice, you would drain the rice, you'd put it in, and then you would let it, you know, just steam for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and then you'd have to take it out, dump it all out, rinse it through hot water, and then put it back in the steamer and let it go for another hour. So I had to do that every single day. There were 10 people in my house. I grew up with 7 other siblings and then my 2 parents, and so we were always cooking. And I used to really dread being in the kitchen. And now that I'm older and have a family, I've realized how sacred the kitchen is. It's my spot to diffuse and think on life and reflect on myself and situations. It's also a place of gathering. So this rice is starting to get a little bit white in color. It will turn that color first, and then it'll start to brown little by little. And as you can see, I'm not leaving the stove not 1 second. I'm constantly babysitting it because this rice can easily burn, especially since I'm not using any oil of any kind. You don't need it. You want it to have a smoky flavor. Funny story, I didn't know anything else other than my Hmong culture. I had no idea what other cuisines offered. All I knew was what I saw on MTV and VH1. Because that's how I learned how to speak English. English is my second language. So anyhow, I was always wondering what these other foods I saw on MTV tasted like. I didn't know what a hamburger was. I didn't know what salad tastes like. I didn't know what spaghetti tastes like. So guess what I did? This genius went to school, and during lunch, I was tasting everything on my tray. It was so exciting. I still remember the feeling I got when I first tried meatballs. I had spaghetti and meatballs. It was one of my first meals I ever had outside of my home, and it was so exhilarating. The flavors were so amazing. that I had to let my 4 younger siblings try some alongside of me. I didn't think it was fair that I was getting to enjoy such exquisite cuisines outside our house, and none of my siblings got to try it because they weren't in school yet. They were too young. So I would take a little bit of my lunch at a time. I'd slide it into my pocket, and then when I got home, the first thing I would do is share the good news and the good stuff. And I would take it out of my pocket after it's sitting in for so many hours, and I would let the siblings take a bite, and they would eat it right out of my hand. I'm like, here. So my mom didn't know I was doing that, and the teachers finally caught on to what I was doing. I got in trouble. They called my parents in. My parents didn't understand a lick of English. They didn't know what they were saying, but essentially they figured out what it was about. They thought I was starving, and they were so concerned. They were about to call, like, you know, the state, the city on my parents because they thought they were not feeding me. And then I explained to them in our conference meeting, I said, listen, teachers, I'm just really excited that I'm tasting food that is not cooked in my kitchen. I can already slice and dice and cook everything as a 6-year-old. But just so you know, I have never had a meatball in my life, and I have never had a hamburger, and I've never had ketchup, and this is all so exciting. Especially when I got a chance to taste the stuffed shells. They were my favorite. That was the last thing I was able to bring home before I got caught. And it was one of my siblings' favorites too. Okay, so take a look at this. You see how it's kind of steaming now, and you see how it's starting to turn brown? When the rice looks this way, and honestly too, if you were in my kitchen right now, you would smell this really smoky smell. It's fragrant. It's really hot. We're gonna let this rice kind of just cool on the side for a second here. And I'm gonna bring over my blender so that I can start, you know, putting some in there, because we are about to puree this to a powder. And the rest can be saved in a container, a Ziploc bag, you name it. It does not need to be refrigerated. This lasts for a couple months, and so depending on, you know, what your cooking needs are, you may want to put it in a more like tight, sealed container. Otherwise, a Ziploc bag is totally fine. I'm gonna grab my blender. So, you know, my parents arrived in the States March of 1980, and my mom and dad were refugees of a country called Laos. Laos is smack in between Vietnam and Thailand. And when my mom and dad got to the States, my mom was so car sick because she was not used to being in any kind of moving vehicle. They lived in a bamboo hut, and they just killed everything fresh, grew everything fresh. They didn't do anything like this civilized nation does, right? So, you know, one of the first shows that they watched was Sesame Street, and my dad took a broom and he beat Big Bird because he thought Big Bird was a demon, and I laughed so much about that because it terrified my sister Leah. All right, I am going to grind this up. It will become a powder, and since it's gonna be really hot, I'm gonna let it sit and just cool afterwards. Mind your ears. Oh, it's perfect, and I love this smell. It smells so good. It just smells like home. Can y'all see that? It's powdery, and you don't need it to be super, super fine. You just need it to be about, like, just grainy, because really this is the key ingredient to adding texture, a smoky flavor. We did not have ovens, so we would just cook on, we would make our kitchens outside of our huts, and we would put it, it would be like on stilts. Because again, they lived in the jungle, and it would be very, very rainy, very hot. So we couldn't really have, like, again, we're jungle people, so we're not, we don't have anything that we could bake. We don't have like a brick oven, nothing like that. So everything's made fresh, everything. We didn't have refrigeration, so even the meat we would kill, we would need to make into beef jerky or some kind of dried meat so that it would last us for weeks at a time. All right, so our next thing is, this is the leftover chicken from our ancient soup. It was boiled with salt, lemongrass, and water. And I don't ever want to throw it away because it has such great flavor. It already has that lemongrass flavor, adds kind of like a tanginess to it. And so I'm going to cut it up real quick. Another one of my handy dandy knives. I have a street name. You know what it is? It's Shank Master Miley. People used to call me that because I could use knives in many creative ways. And of course I'm gonna stick to cooking, and I've always used it for that, but I am going to chop this chicken up just a little bit more, just to get it to be more easier to eat. My mom used to say to me, Lee, you don't wanna like be embarrassed and pick up a piece of vegetable or meat that's so big that you look like a monster trying to bite down on it. Whenever you cook, you always want to keep in mind, how is this going to be more easy, more efficient to eat, to chew on? And so I've never forgotten that, because that helped me so much as I was learning how to make several different items. Oh, and just so you know, I kept some of the broth too, because that broth is so flavorful. It's a hearty broth, and you want this salad to taste really, really good, especially since it's so simple. And you'll see how simple this dish is. You can go home and recreate this on your own. Now, it is a dangerous job because you're working with knives, but I think you guys can pull it off. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm almost done with this. And as you can see, it's a lot more doable, right? This is gonna be so much easier to chew on. So I just got a few pieces here left. And then what I'll do is transfer it right back into this bowl. We're gonna just mix everything. That's the easiest part about most of the Hmong recipes and dishes, is that we didn't have a whole lot of time, right? There's only light for so long. There's only so much time before the meat goes bad, especially in a very hot jungle environment. All right, so this is how it looks. What I'm gonna do next is start adding in everything and just mix everything together at once. Some of our staple items would be green onion, cilantro or cilantro, Thai chilies, mint. And so we're gonna add all of that into this bowl. Now I use everything off the onion except for this very end. And I like to break it off and just kind of measure it, eye it, so that it's about the same length, and then I just cut it all at once. And you wanna just cut it really, really fine, because again, you don't wanna bite into a large piece of onion. Sometimes that can make you not very happy. And this is so fragrant when you put it all together. I'm literally just cutting everything and just mixing it all at once. And by the way, if you don't want to do it with chicken, you could do it with tuna, you could do it with any other fish, really. Sometimes we use, when we do fresh killed beef or fresh killed pork, like a cow or a pig, we will take the skin and the fat, like the outer thick layer of fat from the cow or the pig, and we'll add that in here. What we do with it is we burn off all the hair, we clean it really good, we scrape all of it off super, super well. And once that's done, they boil the outer layer of that fat and skin, and then they chop it fine and they add it to this dish. And that's a very traditional way, because not everybody wants to eat that rubbery part of the skin. I don't add it in today's recipes. Thai chilies, these can actually be frozen and reused, and it still tastes just as spicy and really fresh. I add about 2 to 3 personally, but because I don't want to kill all my guests with spice, I'm gonna just put 1 today, just to add a little bit of a kick. So I'm gonna add Thai chili. I'm gonna do about 1, but you really could add as much as you want, you know, just to taste. So got that finely chopped. I'm gonna add that. And then I've got mint leaves, and you can find this anywhere. Every ingredient I'm using today is going to be found at any grocery store, which is also very nice, very convenient. I'm just gonna use about, gosh, I wanna say Again, I don't use recipes, guys. I don't measure, I just measure with my eyes. I wanna say this is probably a tablespoon of fresh chopped mint leaves. And again, use everything fresh. I've seen at the store these bottled up, you know, minced garlic or like cilantro that's been cut up already. Sorry guys, but I think it's crap. It does not taste good. The other thing I'm gonna use is red onion. Red onion just has that like acidity you're gonna need to balance out all the flavors in this meat salad. And I'm gonna use about 1.5 tablespoons of red onions. There's probably like 1 pound of chicken in here. And so these are about the rough measurements of what you're gonna wanna add to your chicken or your beef. You know, you could do ground beef, you can do pork. And to prepare the meat, by the way, just an extra bonus tip, if you decide to use ground beef, I would boil it with, I would like cook it with a little bit of water, not necessarily boil, but I would just saute it with lemongrass. And then if you have kaffir lime leaves, I would add that too. So I'm gonna add I've got the mint, green onion, cilantro. Now I've got the red onion all up together in here. We're now going to add some fresh lime juice. And again, everything that I cook, almost everything is gonna be fresh ingredients. It's the best way to do everything, I think. And now that I'm losing the strength in my hands and my fingers, I'm going to use this. I used to just do everything by hand until I married my husband 14 years ago. I finally learned how to use tools outside of just a knife in my hands, which is so funny. He bought me, I'll tell you a quick story while I'm doing this. He watched me open cans with a knife and he thought I was crazy. By the way, I'm adding about almost a full lime of lime juice, fresh squeezed. So David, my husband David, was terrified that I'd cut myself or hurt myself because I was cutting up cans, or I was opening up cans with knives. So he finally bought me a can opener and it sat there for like months. And so finally one day he saw me cutting up a can again with a knife and he's like, babe, why aren't you using the can opener? And I, ashamed I didn't use it. I was like, oh, I don't know how to use it. So this was already probably a year, 2 years into our marriage when I started using a can opener. So that just shows you how foreign I am to all this and how naive I was. All right, now that I've got all this in, I'm going to add a very key ingredient to the Hmong dishes and Laotian dishes, which is fish sauce. And this is the brand I recommend. Red Boat's all right too if you're like on the paleo path or the keto path. I'm gonna add just like maybe a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of fish sauce, and then we are going to mix this baby up. And I just use a fork, or sometimes I use my hands. I'm very comfortable with mixing with my hands, and this is a way of that our traditionally our people are used to, is just mixing by hand, because we didn't have a whole lot of tools. The Hmong people in particular were considered savage by the Chinese because we did not use chopsticks. And so we did not use chopsticks till later centuries, but we are very comfortable with just eating with our fingers, and I'll show you why with this dish in particular, because it's served with either sticky rice, which you roll up with your hands and then you eat it with this, or you serve it up with lettuce or celery. And so today I'm going to show you how to eat this. It's funny because, you know, with the American cuisine, I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't know how to serve food a certain way. I didn't know what to do with it. And so I remember one time I made roast beef and I called my friend up and I said, hey, Vicky, what am I supposed to eat with this? I mean, how do I serve it? Do I just like put a piece of toast next to the plate with this roast beef? And she just laughed at me. Now that I've mixed everything in there, the very last ingredient that makes this recipe just stick out is that rice powder that we made in the beginning. So I'm gonna add a little bit of that. And you'll want like a tablespoon, maybe even 2 tablespoons. But this rice powder gives it like a really nice texture. It gives it a crunch, and so when you're eating it, you can taste that smoky flavor too. It just completely changes the whole recipe when you add the rice powder. Oh, it's amazing, you guys. This is how you are supposed to eat LAAB. LAAB can either be eaten like a lettuce wrap. I'm trying to find a good one. Okay, this one's good. You could either line it up just like this and eat it like a lettuce wrap, or you could serve it on a plate right next to it and just kind of put them right next to each other. I'll show you. You could either do it like this, or so you can do it like a lettuce wrap, which I would say is not, it's not traditional. It's not really how we do it. But if that's your style, go ahead. Or what we normally serve it as is we put the meat on the side and then we give people an option. And you could either take the lettuce and grab it with your hands, which is what we do traditionally, or you could serve it as a lettuce wrap. I'm gonna try it right now. Oh yeah. I'd say this is the best way to use your leftovers, don't you think? Shankmaster Miley.